Hello, folks. Hi, this is the one and only Natasha. I know I said I was going to do it yesterday, but unfortunately, I had class and I could not analyze Donat's sun chart. So, this is Donat's sun chart, okay? And so, what I do is because I don't have his time of birth, I'm not able to pull up the true chart, which has the ascendant. So, what I do is I put the sun as the ascendant, which represents his soul, his identity, his ego, and also his personality, the sun side, the sun. So I put a sun as the ascendant, and it pulls up a chart with all the planets, all of his planets, right? So including his moon. Now I don't know if his moon is in Gemini or in Cancer. Could be in either one. It's based off of the time of birth. I think it's in Cancer, but it could be at the end tail of Gemini. So let's go ahead and analyze this chart. So with the sun being at 10 degrees, 10 degrees is the Capricorn degree. So 10 represents Capricorn. Although his sun is in Cancer at 10 degrees, the 10th degree represents Capricorn. So for him, he loves control. His personality, his identity, he loves to control things. He likes to be the one to be controlled. He likes controlling people and he likes controlling himself, but he's definitely a control freak. And he will get emotional if he's losing control because his sun is in, of course, the moon, right? And right next to the sun, if you notice in the 12th house, there's Chiron. What is Chiron? Well, Chiron is the wounded healer. It's the asteroid that represents our wounds. It's hypersensitive area. Wherever it's located is very hypersensitive, right? So that's their wound in their sensitive area. If it's attached to the sun, anytime his ego is wounded, he's wounded. That's probably why he lashes out and is very impulsive in action because Cancer represents the moon. The sun it doesn't feel good in Cancer because that's the moon spot, right? And the sun is Cancer is an emotional sign. It means nurturing, it means caring. It represents the mother, whereas the moon represents the father and the son, right? The sun represents the father and the ego, whereas the moon represents the mother and also your mother, your home, your roots, ancestry. It represents the past. It's your sensitive side. It's the emotions. It's the 4th house, right? So the sun being in Cancer, it's not really good in Cancer, but what emphasizes it the most is, of course, having Chiron there. Chiron is the wounded healer. Okay, so Chiron, it's like Virgo represents the bridge between Uranus and Saturn. Uranus is all about freedom. It's all about breakthroughs, freedom, unexpected things, whereas Saturn is restriction, limitations, and karma, right? So having Chiron next to the sun is when his ego is wounded, he will have emotional outburst towards anybody. He will lash out, be impulsive, and not think because the emotions has hijacked his common sense, basically. His emotions have hijacked his common sense. So common sense goes out the door when he's upset. So I wouldn't be surprised if he got into a lot of trouble, especially if he doesn't get along with his mother. Okay, so of course his son has been wounded by Chiron. His family has wounded him a lot. I wouldn't be surprised if his mother kicked him out at an early age. I would not be surprised of that. But let's go ahead and read the rest of the chart. And he has a lot of past life issues, right? Again, this is the sun chart. This is not the actual ascendant chart. I'm going based off of how he feels about everything and what he does. Okay. Now, we have next to Chiron, we have the moon. Remember, the moon represents the mother, the emotions, your instinctive, ways and stuff like that. The moon right now, it's in Cancer. So he could have been a new moon baby, but of course he missed the mark, but he still carries that energy. So he's like closer to a crescent moon baby, but he could have been a new moon, but he's just not there because the moon is very close to the sun. It's about what 10 degrees away. I mean, it's a week because it's far away from each other. It's kind of weak, but since the moon is in the same sign of Cancer, that means he's an emotional person. He's very sensitive. Okay, and home and family women have wounded him the most. Again, his mother has wounded him the most. Maybe that's why it could be a reason why he doesn't get along with women and also even his siblings, because family. Period. He does not get along with family. He probably had an estranged. Um, I don't know, but he probably had a lot of issues with his family, including estrangement, or even his mother probably kicked him out at an early age. I don't know, but I'm just basing it off of the Chiron next to the moon and also his son. And also his father. He probably doesn't even know his father. His father wasn't there at all because the father represents the son as well. And having Chiron between the sun and the moon, both parents was not, for him, he feels like both parents were not up to par, did not educate him, gave him tools, nothing. They didn't teach him anything. And in fact, they disowned him. Um, Now, he does have in the 12th house, remember 12th house is the subconscious house, it's the past life. So he probably have past life issues with women and also his mother. Um, and 12th house is also secret enemies. So he probably had secret enemies as his mother, including siblings, because he has Mercury in the 12th house and it's in Gemini. Gemini represents sibling, Mercury represents sibling. So he probably lost siblings too. And I think he said that too, because 12th house is losses, the houses of expenditure and losses. But he has Jupiter there. And Jupiter and Mercury together is Jupiter is luck, right? Where you have luck, it's also your judgment zone. It's also your principles, how you learn, right? And your belief system. He has Jupiter at 23 degrees. 23 degrees is the Aquarius degree. Okay. And it's in the sign of Gemini, meaning communication. He loves talking behind the scenes. He loves it. And he could overly exaggerate everything he talks about, because Jupiter next to Mercury overly exaggerates. It's an expansion. Wherever it is, it expands and it over exaggerates. So he has index to actually at the same degree as Mercury. So he can be very braggadocious and hide his true self. Since it's Gemini, he could be two-faced. Gemini. These are negative traits, guys. He could be two-faced, but a very since it's in the 12th house, the house is hidden. And he has Mercury there. He could have prophetic dreams or even dreams talking. He could be even talking in his dreams. But he probably had losses, siblings. He probably lost a couple of siblings. He probably lost siblings because it's at 23 degrees, and also was separated from his siblings and mother, which caused wounds to his ego, right? Probably has interpersonal issues because, of course, Jupiter and Mercury together next to the moon and Chiron. He's not really good talker. And also, these are opposing Saturn. I'm going to get to Saturn in a minute. Saturn is your karma, the things that you do that creates a lot of chaos in your life that you need to learn, your lessons and stuff like that. I'll get to that in a minute. His Mercury is at 23 degrees and his Jupiter is at 23 degrees. Those degrees means Aquarius, means separation, divorce, just unexpected things and separation. He was separated from his siblings. He probably was separated from a lot of mentors, or even if he gets an opportunity, that opportunity just ends. It could be any opportunity. It could be jobs. It could be. I think he was. He said he was an actor or whatever. I don't. But everything is pretty much short lived. When you have Jupiter and Mercury next to each other, the 12th house, things are short lived. So he'll get something because he's a good talker, but the same thing that he gets is his Achilles heel. It's the same thing he loses. So it's like Regulus, right? You get fame, but then again, it's disgraceful. It's taken away from you because everything is uncovered and stuff like that. So he has to be mindful because he gets luck. He has luck through his communication, but he may lie a lot because Jupiter and Mercury hide things in the 12th house. And once it's uncovered, he's going to lose it. And that's what typically happens, especially when it's at 23 degrees. So he gets opportunity, but he loses it right away because of maybe because he got disrespectful, it's impulsive at speech, or they uncovered the truth that he was lying. And also probably his siblings he was separated from because, again, he has secret enemies, right? But he creates this. You remember there's cause and effect of everything. You are the cause and you are the effect in life by the choices you make. But he has a mouth on him. Having Jupiter next to Mercury, you have a mouth on you and you create drama wherever you go. Okay, now let's talk about these oppositions. Right now, his sun, you remember the sun is the ego, the identity. It's opposing Saturn. Having sun oppose Saturn means you have issues with authority figures. That's probably why he can't keep a job or any opportunity is short-lived. So that emphasized that even more. He has Saturn in the sign of Capricorn. Capricorn is the boss, right? Capricorn means the boss. It's your status in life. It's your career. Okay, wherever Saturn is where you got to work really hard in order to maintain. Okay, any issues or upsets or whatever. Let me see if his Saturn is retrograde. No, his Saturn is retrograde. So he's redoing a lifetime of issues he had in his past life with authority figures. So again, that's why I said his father was separate. He probably doesn't know his father, but it's the same degree as 10 degrees as his sun degree. So he has control issues. He cannot control his mouth. He's very impulsive in speech. And he's very, because Mercury, it opposed Mercury too. So Saturn, Saturn isn't opposes Mercury. The moon opposes the moon opposes Saturn and the sun opposes Saturn. From what I see. And what else opposes Saturn? The Chiron opposes Saturn. So, of course, his sensitive area is his identity, his ego, right? And another sensitive, he has a lot of fears when it comes to other people. Oppositions mean others, okay? What you do to others. He has a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, fears, and he appears to be one way, but in reality, inside him, he's not that way at all. He has a lot of fears, insecurities, especially of worthiness. He does not think he's worthy. He probably has a lot of anxiety issues too. That's why he goes off. He does not know how to control his anger at all because Chiron plus the sun and the moon is opposing Saturn. You have issues with your emotions. His emotions can cause a lot of havoc in his life. It can cause a lot of chaos. And it can even cause imprisonment because the 12th house is imprisonment. So I'm sure he's been in jail for a couple of times because of his fears, right? And then he has Saturn retrograde. He's redoing a lifetime of past life stuff, right? So he has ego issues. When his ego is triggered, that's when his nastiness comes out. Okay. And he can be very disrespectful, very emotional. He's emotionally triggered by everything. Okay. If he feels attacked, his worst will come out. and he doesn't care because everything is driven by his emotions. He has no logic when he's emotional. Okay? Because logic goes out the door because his Chiron is conjunct his sun and moon, and it opposes Saturn. Okay, and his Mercury's in right next to Jupiter. And his Jupiter's right next to his moon. So everything is emotionally driven. He has no control over his emotions. He's emotionally immature. Now, when his Saturn returned, he had a lot of problems when Saturn returned. I think that was age 33, 34, or even 28. It could be age 28. Saturn return usually happens at 20. No, 28 is Mars activation. 33, 34, Saturn's activated at 28. I could actually put it on here. So he had a lot of issues with people during his 28th year. Now his Neptune, the Neptune is the spiritual planet. It also is a planet of fogginess, of spirituality. I know he doesn't believe in God because when you have Neptune retrograde and the sign of Capricorn, Neptune also represents media. It also represents. So he probably connects with people in the media field, or he likes older men because Saturn represents older people. He does not, if he's with a younger guy, or a younger person, he probably does it just to control them, but he rather control a younger man. An older man. Like he likes older people because Saturn, but he loves to deceive them too, because when you have Neptune is also the Decepticon. It's the planet of deception, and it's right next to Saturn. He likes a person that he can control, use, and deceive. So one of his karmas, because Saturn represents karma, number one is his ego. His ego can cause a lot of problems, even in imprisonment, because there's an opposition, and it's based on other people. Oppositions are based on other people. He has Saturn opposing Chiron. That means his wounds is based off of, authority figures, or even like his mother, his father, or older people. He has no respect for older people because they've wounded him the most, right? And, or a person in power. It could be like, for instance, Hollywood executives have wounded him the most. So he really has no respect for them. So he could, make disparaging comments, curse them out, and just use foul language because there's no respect there. And he feels wounded by all people that's older than him. And he really doesn't care about age, in fact, because his parental figures were not there for him. Okay? So even executives, he could be very disrespectful towards older people, executives, or people in power because, again, he likes control. Okay, let's go to the next one. So Neptune is at 11 degrees and it's retrograde. He's redoing a life when it comes to his spirituality. Okay? And since Saturn is next to Neptune, that means, of course, he feels that executives, people in power, have deceived him. Right? He feels that there's a spiritual warfare going on, and people have lied to him, deceived him, have tricked him. That's what he feels. Remember, this is his sun chart. The sun chart represents how he feels towards others, right? Or his personality as well. So the good thing about this, he could work at media or behind the scenes like secret services, or, he could work, but he has to be his own boss. But he has to work out his karma and learn he needs to be better at communicating with people. He needs to be better at telling the truth, of course, and being authentic and not being somebody else, because he could change who he is in a minute. Like he'll appear one way, then he'll change the next minute depending on the audience. So you'll get a different version of him, So Saturn he likes to work in media. He probably did it in a past life. Or He was probably into spirituality, or I'm sorry, guys. I just entered my. Okay, so Saturn next to Neptune. Yes, in his past life, he was in media. He was probably, but he was a boss, right? But when it's retrograde, that means the fears are inherent within him. The fears are self-inflicted. But he has control issues, and he also have parent issues, his mother and father. So that's going to be very hard for him to overcome, because number one, it's retrograde. He does not, and Neptune retrograde, positive part of Neptune is spirituality, right? It's your spirit self, your intuition, you being honest with yourself and others. Negative part of Neptune is deception, lies, making up stuff, creating anything that's a fog that does not speak the truth. That's the negative part of it. So that's part of his controlling nature. And he feels within himself, because it's retrograde, that he has to do it in order to get the recognition. You remember, Capricorn is all about recognition, being noticed, and being seen by the public. So the negative part, he could do anything in order to be seen by the public, but it could be deceptive in nature. So that, because it's retrograde, he does it because of his internal ego wants to be recognized or noticed. He's not doing it to be, everybody has a choice to be good or to be bad. But bad usually comes from ego. My ego wants to be happy. My ego wants to be noticed, recognized, but recognition is strong with him. He wants to be recognized so bad. He wants recognition, but he has interpersonal issue. He's probably xenophobic. I don't know, but he has, you would think he's autistic because he has interpersonal issues. He does not know how to maintain relationships and develop them and keep them for the long haul, because that opposition between Saturn, his moon, Chiron, and his sun. Because of those oppositions, it's hard for him. He never was taught that. He didn't learn that. And of course, he has issues and trust issues with authority figures, parents, siblings. He has trust issues. But some of these issues are based off of inherent fears from his childhood. But he has wounds from his family, like deep wounds that he has not overcome. And you can tell he hasn't overcome those wounds, because when he's upset, see how he reacts with no control. His emotions just take over. Absolutely no control. Basically his emotions has hijacked his mental capacity. So I'm basing it on his chart. I've seen it, but this chart is telling a totally different story. It's giving more information as to why. Well, it's not telling a different story. It's telling me why he does what he does. But everything he's doing is for control, recognition, to be seen, and he likes being notorious because Neptune is retrograde. Neptune is the Decepticon. And having Saturn right next to Neptune, it can be good and it can be bad. It's up to that individual. Okay, he can work in churches having Neptune. He could work as an actor because Neptune is media, right? But he has to be authentic. That's how he burns his bad karma. He has to be authentic, and he has to stop playing games. Because Saturn does not play. Whatever you do to me, you did to your future self. That's what Saturn does. He teaches you major lessons in life. So his lesson is control, respecting authority figures, having respect for himself and others, and also being an honest person, being authentic. Okay, that's his. And stop trying to seek recognition at all costs. Stop trying to control people. The moment he loses control, he start cursing people out. And I've seen it, but I didn't ever put two to two together. But this chart basically tells me what happens when he realizes he cannot manipulate and control a person. And Capricorn, because of control, they manipulate people. Okay, that's the negative part of Capricorn. There's great parts of Capricorn, which is they're workaholic, they take their job seriously. They're very good businessmen. That's the positive. But the negative part is destructive. Okay, they do mischievous things in order to get to the top. That's the negative part of, including lying, because Neptune is right there, right? Okay, so Uranus is in the 6th house. That means a lot of separations when it comes to work. And it's because of internal fears. It's retrograde. Again, he has a lot of retrograde planets. So there's a lot of karma, self-inflicted karma that he creates. And it's like a circle. It keeps going over and over again until he fixes and stop it. I would suggest that every weekend that he goes to, he volunteers, because Saturn is Saturn and Capricorn, though they have to do work. And I suggest he do it on Saturday. He go and feed the homeless in order to burn karma, or else he will not understand nothing that's happening. All these bad things that happen to him, he will never understand it. But he's the cause and the effect of everything that happens to him based off of his decision and the choices he makes. Okay? Because remember, everything he does, it's a circle. It comes back to him. Having Saturn in retrograde comes back to him. He has a lot of deep insecurities, but he masks him. He masks every insecurity by trying to be the tough guy, using his mouth as a mouthpiece. But people can see through that BS. People can see through it. Eventually people will see through it. And guess what? There will be separations. Jupiter is his luck planet. He has luck through his communication. But that same luck through communication will separate him from people, because it's 23 degrees. Same thing with Mercury. Mercury is the communication. He gets contract. He gets jobs. But it will separate him because of that 23 degrees, because his cause and effect of his mouth. Okay? Now, let's see here, the 2nd house. The 2nd house, but he loves money. He loves money and stuff like that. But the things that trigger him is most is authority figures, jobs, and his parents, and also his siblings, especially women, especially women. He uses women, but he needs them because he's a Cancer, right? Now, his second house is family and also money, anything worthy or valuable, right? That's the 2nd house, your savings, money, and everything. Now, he has the 2nd house at Leo. He has Venus there and he has Mars there in the South Node. What is the South Node? It's a destiny point, what you came into this life, what you already learned, but you're getting rid of. You no longer, you use it, but that's not what you're drawn to do in this life. The 8th house, which is the opposite house, and the North Node destiny is what you came here to learn and what your intentions, what you need to do. Now, let's examine the 2nd house. So the 2nd house, he has Venus and Mars in the 2nd house. Having Venus at 3rd degree, he loves talking. He even likes hearing himself talk. That's how much he loves talking. Remember, Venus is women. Venus also represents what you love, money and love, pretty much. That's all it is. Relationships and money. Things that you value, right? So Venus at 3 degrees, one of the things he likes to do is talk. And it's in the sign of Leo. Leo is all about the ego. But again, Leo is about actors. It's actors. I mean, I'm a Leo ascendant. It's changing faces, being different people at different times. It's actors. It represents actors. It also represents the ego, represents your childhood, right? So the 5th house, it's the fun house. It's the house of creativity, of business, of speculative business, of children, right? So he could have a boy or a son. I don't know. I don't have his ascendant. But when you have Venus next to Mars, Mars is the male planet. It's the aggression, your assertiveness, your action, how you take your action. Him and I have both Mars, right? And Leo. Once our ego is affected, I know how Mars and Leo acts because I'm a Mars and Leo. Once my ego is triggered, that's it. I will only react once my ego is triggered. But you have to understand something. His Mars is next to Venus. That means women relationships will trigger him. And he's very impulsive when it comes to women or relationships, right? And he probably has relationships with many women and men. When I see Mars and Venus together, that means it's a possibility he likes both men and women. But he probably likes men more because, again, we have to go back and look at the karma, the Saturn. Since he had a bad relationship with his mother and he probably never met his father, we'll get into that very soon, which I already can see he probably haven't, or the father died very early. He sticks, and women have caused him a lot of pain in life because Chiron is pain, right? Chiron is traumatic pain that you carry with you, and you have to transmute it into something else and overcome that pain. But clearly he has not overcome that pain. He carries with him as if he's carrying a bag of his clothes, right? He has Venus next to Mars. He can get into a lot of fight. You remember, Mars is fighting too. He can get into a lot of fights with women, especially verbally, because the second house is the vocal cord. It's the mouth. Okay? So he could get into a lot of fights with women. I can see that clearly in his sun chart. He can get into a lot of fights with women, even women siblings, women anywhere, right? And so he could get into a lot of fights. And he's very dramatic with it too. And I'm sure all of you have seen him in action. He gets into a fight with women, and that ends the relationships, okay? Including men. He gets into fights with men, and it ends the relationships right away. But mostly women is the worst, right? But he makes money off of women because he has Venus, which is money, in the house, the second house. He can make, this is possibilities, these are potential. He can make a lot of money off of women. And also men, because Mars is there in the second house. He can make money off of both. No wonder he's bisexual. It's all about money. It's not whether he likes them or not. It's about how much he can make. But men, he will make way more money because men are 10 times as much to pay for sex than women. But he makes money off of men plus women. That makes sense because he does make money on YouTube. And also, I think he's a porn star or something. Not a porn star, but he's like a male prostitute on OnlyFans or something like that. But yeah. And then he has the South Node. South Node is something you came in this life with that you need to just let go of, right? So second house is, of course, the money, your values, your worth. And also it can be a Achilles heel, right? So having South Node there, he already knows how to, he probably in his past life, he had kids already, right? So in his past life, he has kids as well. And then this past life, he knows how to make money. He does. Using men and women, he knows how to make money. But in this life, he's going towards the 8th house of partnerships, of making money with others instead of just making money on his own. He has to create money through others, right? And that makes a lot of sense. He always says, collaborate. That's North Node in the 8th house. 8th house means death and rebirth, partnership, shared resources, right? It also means trust issues. That's the negative part. Betrayal, trust issues. So in this life, he probably went through a lot of betrayals, trust issues, and it's in a sign of Aquarius through friends, especially through friends or networks, right? Family too, because Aquarius represents friends, network, family. But he always wants to belong or be a part of a group, because his North Node is what you're destined to come here to learn and be. Right? So he wants to be part of a group. He wants to be wanted, fit in of a group. But that same thing he really wants or desires, he gets betrayal, kicked out of a group. This is what he will experience. He'll get kicked out of a group. People betray him, or he betrays people, and then, it's a cause and effect, like I mentioned. He will experience these things, especially from friends and groups of people and family as well, right? And you have North Node trining Jupiter. So that means he has luck in this area, but again, it's at 23 degrees. And the luck is short-lived. Okay? He does get it, but it's short-lived. Okay? And he has Mercury, meaning he communicates. 8th house is the house of sex and death and rebirth. It also is the house of sexual diseases. So he needs to be very careful because Aquarius means group sex. So I could see him doing group sex. Okay? He probably does group sex, but he needs to protect himself. And I would tell anybody this, not just him, who has North Node in the 8th house, in the Aquarius degree. He may have group sex. He's probably into that, what they call those things, swingers clubs. He probably loves that. Because North Node is trining Mercury. So he likes communicating about sex too. I wouldn't be surprised that he communicates, but he tries to do it behind the scenes. But he has sexual fantasies that he actually wants to make them reality. So he's probably good at talking about sex, like sex talk or whatever. But he loves it. He gets a heart off of talking about it, and then he'll eventually do it. But in this life, the 8th house is also the life. The 8th house is the house of death and rebirth, taxes, other people's money. It's not your money, it's other people's. It's shared resources. That's probably, like I said, he always want to collaborate with groups of people or, just friends or whatever, this and that. And he has Jupiter and Mercury trining the North Node, right? Yeah. He has, I think is it the sun? Hold on. Yeah, he has Jupiter and Mercury trining the North Node. Possibly the sun. I'm not sure if his sun is in Cancer or if it's in fact in Gemini. I think it's in Cancer, but it could be at the intel of Gemini. Based off of him, I would say it's in Cancer because he's just uncontrollable in his speech. Geminis, they think before they say stuff, but a Cancer moon, they're just going to go off. And I could see him being a Cancer moon and a sun in Cancer because he has no control. Now, let's see here. Okay, so that's the 2nd house. So what he came here to learn is to let go of his ego, because it's in Leo, and focus on trusting himself and collaborating with others. Okay, now in his 4th house, he has Virgo starts his 4th house, right? So what that means is that Mercury is the ruler. It's in the 12th house, separated from mother and siblings, because Mercury represents siblings, and the 4th house represents the mother. So definitely he was separated from his mother and his siblings because the ruler of that house is in the 12th house. 12th house is losses. Okay. Thank you. And then, so there's and what else? Okay, let's go back to the 2nd house. I forgot to mention that because I do see an aspect. So Mars and Venus is squared Pluto. Pluto is the planet of pain, destruction. It rules Scorpio, rules the 8th house. It's manipulation, control, death and rebirth. I mean, that's where catharsis starts, because the thing is, cut out the old, the new comes in. But Pluto, you experience a lot of pain with Pluto. Pluto is power too. People that want power and control. But it's also manipulation, control, pain, a lot of pain. Okay? He has Venus and Mars in the 2nd house, squaring. Squares are tension and friction. Squaring Pluto, and Pluto is retrograde as well. He has a lot of past life problems with men and women, because Venus is women, Mars is man. Mars is also how he asserts himself, right? But it's in the second house, so that means family. But it also means just people in general. Pluto. So when there's a square, when you have squares with Pluto, with Mars and Pluto, that means Mars and Pluto together, square, that's conflict. Okay? That means he wants control. And if he does not get control, he's violent. Okay? It's manipulation. So his pain will come out based off his action. And everything is internalized because Pluto is retrograde. So it's going deep to the past. So it may have nothing to do with you, but because you triggered that pain of his, he may say something that just off, like really bad, right? And he may even say he's going to take action too with his words, right? And because his ego is involved, he has a huge ego, and his ego gets him into trouble all the time. And he knows that, but he does not care because his emotions is involved. Like I said, his emotions have hijacked his common sense. It hijacked his mind. Okay? His mental capacity, pretty much. So Venus, so he has a lot of past life issues and pain when it comes to women. He have a lot of pain and issues when it comes to men too. But I say women first because his Venus is squaring Pluto, Leo, and Scorpio. And one of his problems that will land him in jail is his actions. He takes impulsive action. Whereas men or women, it doesn't matter. He takes impulsive action. But he have problem with both men and women. I think he has interpersonal issues. Like he does not know how to deal with people. So he's very manipulative. He has power trips with people, power struggles, all of that with women and men. There's no distinction because there's a square there. Tension and friction all the time. Okay? And it has to do with his childhood experiences with, I think, the mother, the father, and also people in the household, his siblings, right? So he can't determine anything because it takes him back to childhood. And that's where his action comes about. It's very significant because when I see people Venus square Pluto, oh my gosh, I'm scared of those people. Because Venus square Pluto, it can be deadly. You know, once they're emotional, it can be or their ego is involved, it can be very deadly. Okay. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Now, his Pluto is in the 5th house. So this means he had a lot of pain during, because 5th house is your childhood, right? So he had a lot of, his childhood was filled with up and down, up and down, up and down. He never had a stable childhood. It was never stable. It was always tumultuous. It was always unstable. So if he told everybody that he had a stable childhood, he was lying. Like, it was always a death and rebirth. Ending something, starting something. Ending something, starting something. He had a very terrible childhood. It could even be molestation or sexual childhood. Where he probably was very sexual when he was younger and used his body when he was younger. Or he was probably molested or sexual abuse. This could have happened during his childhood. That's probably why he's numb to it. And he's a nympho when it comes to sex. And he sleeps with anything walking. And that's why, I made a joke about it the other day. That he will fuck a mailbox. Because he has no control over his penis. And I didn't even see his chart. I just pulled up his chart just now. But he became a nympho because of his internalized experiences that were very painful and that was traumatic. He's numb to feeling when it comes to sex. He has sex for pleasure only. Not for love, because I don't think he knows what love is. He has no idea because his parents never showed him anything. So, yeah. And usually you see this in a chart of like of people doing porno, prostitutes, and people that's engaging in those sexual activity. Because the thing is, when your parents don't give you love or show you love as a child, you become bitter and you see people as something to use. You don't see them as people anymore. You just see them as I can use them for my own pleasure. And you get gratification from that because you don't know what love is. No one taught you it. No one showed you it. So your love is now displaced. And now it's transformed into sexual pleasure. So I know he probably doesn't even know what love means. He has no clue what love is. And if I was to sit down and break it down for him and do a psychological evaluation on him, he would sit there and cry because I could see through his bullshit. All that mask he wears for you guys, I see through it. That's why he blocks me, because I see through the mask. And I saw through, because I'm a Scorpio moon. Scorpio's moon see through everything. I made predictions without even looking at his chart, without even doing nothing. I don't do cards and stuff. I made it just by looking at him and seeing his behavior. I did the same thing with Jaguar. Because certain things you don't need astrology. You can just see a pattern of behavior if you paid attention and use your intuition. And that's what I do all the time. Your best asset within yourself is your intuition. That's your best asset. I use it all the time. I trust it all the time. It never fails me. Okay. So, of course, he has transformative relationships with men and women. When I say transformative, and also man and woman can transform him, but because it's internalized, it will be very hard. If I was to sit here and talk to Donat over the phone, it can be a very transformative experience, but he has to stop like he knows it all. One of the problems with him, because he has the North Node in Aquarius, he thinks he knows it all. He thinks he has all the answer and he knows everything. When in fact, he knows nothing at all. He doesn't even know what love is. He hasn't even experienced it because he's been giving his body away just for gratification, just to feel good, just to numb the pain, the traumatic experiences from his past. But if I was to sit here and psychoanalyze him and just talk to him and tell him how could he reverse this karma of his, he would be blown away. He would be blown away. And I gave him a free thing just now. If he listens to this, I don't know if he's going to listen to it because his ego is always involved. But if he sits down and listens to it, he can change his karma right away. All he has to do is, I gave him one thing. I said, you know what? On Saturdays, since Saturn is ruled on Saturdays, Capricorn is ruled on Saturdays, give to the homeless every Saturday. You're going to see little things change in your life because God is blessing you. You think he would do that? I don't even think he believes in God. Neptune retrograde, your ass don't believe in God. You've been through too much bad experiences. Why should you? You don't even know if there's a God. Like, why God didn't get me out of this situation? Why God let this happen? Why God? You're going to start questioning things because you realize you went through so much traumatic experiences and nobody has been there for him. No one has been there for him. But it's the cause and effect of his behavior. And it's not his fault. He does not know how to act. He never had the tools. Nobody showed him the right way. So we can't blame him entirely. But he has a choice to make. And I'm sure he went to counseling for his mental illness if he had one. I'm sure he had mental illness. Having Mercury in the 12th house, your ass have mental illness. But you mask it somehow. So Pluto is also Pluto, the planet of manipulation, power struggles, and also pain, your deepest pain. Trines are easy energy, easy flow of energy. It's trining his Chiron, the wounded healer. Again, once he's in pain, he's automatically triggered. Okay? It also trines his sun and his moon. Sun is his ego. So he could be very manipulative, but also his ego can be bruised. And he probably had a very painful, traumatic experience during his childhood that he will never forget. Okay? His mother, very, very bad relationship with his mother. He tries over and over again, but now he probably just lets her be. But his mother caused him the greatest pain ever. He just doesn't know it. Okay? So we also have Pluto trining Saturn. Saturn is father too. His father probably wasn't around, or he probably didn't really know his father. Authority figures caused him pain. Authority figures, older people, bosses caused him pain. Okay? You can see that from Pluto trining Saturn. His father probably wasn't there. His father probably died. Who knows? I don't know about that because I don't have his ascendant. Okay. So 7th house, we have Saturn and Neptune in the 7th house. Again, a lot of deceptions because of authority figures. It's just a lot of stuff happening. His karma is control, power struggles and control. And also just him being very insecure, which leads to disrespect, which leads him to act erratic, changeable, a chameleon, someone that everyone dislikes, right? So basically, in his psyche, let me see where his psyche is. His karma is, of course, from his childhood. His psyche is in the 8th house. Yeah, he loves sex. He probably loves having groups of sex with friends and groups. He loves sex, but he needs to be careful because Aquarius, you could have unexpected diseases. With Aquarius in that 8th house, it can be unexpected. He needs to be very careful because it's also trining Jupiter, which expands anything. The North Node is an invisible planet, right? I mean, not a planet, but it's an invisible point in a chart, right? Leads to your destiny, what you're here to learn. So he's going to be learning a lot of stuff about death and rebirth. So in his lifetime, he's always going to get something, then lose it. Get it, lose it. Get it, lose it. Friendships, networks, groups, whatever, even jobs. Get it, then lose it. Get it, then lose it. He will always experience that until he learns the lesson. Okay? And it trines Jupiter. Jupiter's luck, meaning he gets it through his communication. But he also loses it because it's at 23 degrees. Mercury, he gets it, contracts, because of his communication. He's very good at communicating, but he loses it because of the same thing that he's good at. He's bad at as well. So, but that's part of his destiny, right? And also his emotions can get the best of him. Okay? But having North Node, your sun chart, you remember the sun chart is himself. And let me see where Saturn is transiting from his sun chart. Let's look at where Saturn is. So Venus is in his 1st house. So it's a woman coming in his sphere, right? Mars is leaving his 1st house. It's going into the 2nd house. He's going to be arguing with women. I already see that. Where's Saturn at? Okay, so he has the new moon is occurring in his 11th house. 11th house is friends, networks, groups, right? There's a new beginning in that area. So something is ending for something new to start. So he's ending. There's friendships that are ending right now. We can see that from the sun and moon in the 11th house. Uranus is in the 11th house. That means he will have a lot of separations from friends, networks, and groups because of his value system. His self-worth, his values, and his mouth, because Venus represents the 11th house. It's in the 2nd house. His mouth caused a lot of ending of relationships. But he has no idea why. Chiron is in his 10th house. So people, how he's being seen is making him, he has a sensitive area, which is, it's transiting his 10th house. So the public sees through him right now. They see through the bullshit, him lying, him creating narratives. So he's wounded by the public right now. He may not act like it, but he's wounded. Whenever you see him lash out, he's wounded. He's badly wounded because he has insecurities. Just remember that. So right now he's in a lot of pain. He's wounded right now. He's like a wounded puppy, but he will never show it or pretend. He won't until it gets really bad. Let him lose half his subscribers. You're going to see the real him. He's going to start begging because that's a manipulation tactic he used. He'll start making people feel sorry for him. Once he gets the people in his graces, then he'll revert back to his normal ways of manipulation, lying, and controlling the masses. Okay? He has Saturn in his 9th house, right? 9th house is the belief system. And also 9th house is your morals, your moral compass, court cases. So he probably is having court cases right now because of the lies he's told, right? On people, because Saturn is in his 7th house. So he's probably going through court cases right now, moral issues. What else is the 9th house? Belief system he's not believing in himself right now, even though he appears to. He wears a mask, just remember that. So he needs to be careful because the Saturn is in the 9th house and Neptune is there. So if he has legal battles, he could be losing it right now. Saturn is in his 9th house. It restricts and limits anything. Depends on what our houses is. If he tries to publish something, it's not going to work. If he tries to start something as it relates to ninth matters, legal matters, anything, it's just not going to work. It will work against him because Saturn limits everything. And also Saturn is in the 7th house. So when it comes to 7th house is also enemies and lawsuits and stuff like that. He's going to lose, or he has to work extremely hard in order to win, like 10 times harder. So right now, yeah, he's going through some mess. And then the South Node right now is transiting through his 5th house. A lot of his memories from his childhood is coming up right now. He's being extremely triggered, and it's coming up from his childhood. Even people are talking about his childhood. People are exposing him right now because South Node is in the 5th house, and Pluto is there, and the South Node is there. So he's being exposed right now. He's probably been exposed for the last month or two. I'm sorry, for this full year, since January. Because the South Node is transiting his 5th house of childhood. So his children are being exposed if he has any. Everything is being exposed right now. And right now, the North Node, which he gained a lot of recognition. His North Node was in the 10th house, which is recognition, which he gained when he first came on YouTube. Now it's moving to his 11th house. So he'll probably lose some friends, but gain some more. But it's going to take time because it's not really at the 11th house yet, but it will move into the 11th house by June, mid-June to July. He'll experience that. But right now, Uranus is trining his Saturn and his Neptune. So he's going through problems right now. And again, he can fix this, but it's up to him. If he allows his ego to go to destroy him, further. But pretty much this is all I had to say about him. I promised you guys that I was going to do a chart on Donat. And this is his chart, guys. So I'm gonna post it in. Let me post it right now.